Look, let's be honest. I love mods, and I think everyone should be enjoying heavily modded games. I just love the freedom which comes from customizing games exactly how you wish, and I highly appreciate the communities that make it happen. This video aims to showcase some of my favourite modding communities and the games that are great for you to mod. Now, keep in mind I haven't spoken about all the modded games, but I tried to give a variety based on age and impact. Mods often seem like a throwaway, unnecessary, and in some ways improper. However, mods have been a launchpad for new genres, gameplay mechanics, and even whole new video game companies and careers. Games like Dota, Team Fortress 2, and even the entire tower defense genre would not be possible without the strides made by mod makers willing to donate their time and passion to the hobby that we all know and love. I apologize in advance if this list is nowhere near as complete as you need it to be, but I hope you'll enjoy coming with me on this journey as I spotlight some of my favourite modding communities. Number 10. Total Annihilation. Total Annihilation is an RTS game with some of the greatest music and gameplay I've ever had the pleasure of playing. Within it, you have a commander, who is singularly the most important unit in your game. He builds the first tier of your base, and if he's destroyed, it may be game over. Total Annihilation is the spiritual predecessor to both Supreme Commander and Planetary Annihilation, two games with their own fantastic communities. While both communities had their own impressive selection of mods, I always find myself coming back to Total Annihilation as the best example of modding in this family of RTS games. Based on the website Total Annihilation Universe, the TA modding community has been around since near its release in 1997. What once started as a collection of small, individual, new unit pages rapidly exploded as time went on and coalesced into its modern home of TA Universe. Moving from the simple a la carte offerings where you can individually download hundreds of units from a myriad of creators, this eventually evolved into a community of total conversions, adding hundreds of units and sometimes even factions into the game. The community created some of the first mod managers, replaced their game's servers after the company went bankrupt, and continued to spruik the game even 20 years on. While the number of mod updates has started to dwindle over time, what is left is no less impressive. Nor is the fact that some of these major mega mods can actually be played all at once, leading to frankly absurd gameplay prospects. Many major mods have been left a little bit unloved, but the best of them is TA Escalation. Total Annihilation Escalation does exactly what it says in the tin. It escalates. A lot. In TA you start with small tier 1 units. They're weak, they're fast, and they're easy to produce, which quickly get replaced or supplemented with stronger tier 2 units. While the example shown here is ships, there are aircraft, tanks, land infantry, hovercraft, submarines, and more. The base had a single tier 3 unit, which was even bigger, and this mod multiplies that number to a huge degree. Instead of one singular unit for one faction, we see each faction rewarded a selection of tier 3 units, filling the same niches as their tier 2 counterparts. The experimental unit tier then instead becomes tier 4, because why the F not? These units are so gigantic that not only do they take a small city to resource, they can also destroy an even larger one. Other mods introduce additional factions, aimed at bringing balance to the original set, and some completely replace the entire game with spaceships because, once again, why not? Number 9. The Civilization franchise. Civilization has been one of the oldest, still active franchises, and always follows the same formula. You lead your people from humble beginnings all the way to the current era. Throughout that time period, you must explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate your rivals. And while Civilization isn't the first 4X game, hell, there wasn't even a term for it till 1993 when Masters of Orion came onto the scene, it's long been a staple in what users can expect from the genre as a whole. Modding has been a common element of Civilization ever since Civilization 2. While these initial mods were very basic, they still placed the foundation of what would come. Now, in my opinion, the peak of Civilization modding happened with Civilization 4. Don't at me, bro. Actually, no, wait, do at me. It'd be great for engagement. But we'll get back to that in a moment. Anyway, ironically, the two more modern titles have floundered mod-wise, with limited mods despite being the first in the series to actually have access to Steam Workshop. These mods were highly restricted in what they could be done, and the lack of modification possible to the exe file further reduced this variety. Civilization 4 had a special combination of being just new enough that the engine could handle some serious changes, but not so new that performing these changes were impossible. Early mods were simply custom maps, but other larger mods, such as the super realistic Rise and Fall of Civilization or the fantasy Fall from Heaven, really stretched what the community was capable of. One of my favourite mods was called Rise of Mankind, a mod designed to add a bunch of new technologies to the game. Once abandoned, however, this mod was resurrected again to become A New Dawn, and eventually A New Dawn 2 when it was also once more abandoned. A New Dawn added a bunch of new techs and gameplay and the concept and quickly became one of the most popular mods on Civ Fanatics, the website which most commonly hosted Civ 4 mods. After this, the great success of the mod was promptly abandoned again, and relaunched as Caveman to Cosmos. Caveman to Cosmos amazingly still lives to this day, with daily patches released on its nightly channels by its very active communities. This mod took everything from its predecessors and added a new focus on extreme, early, and future technologies, leading the ability for someone to play Civilization 4 from the very dawn of mankind, all the way to our far-flung future in the stars. This mod has been revolutionary in what it was able to achieve, with planet maps created with space areas for colonization, and the tech tree is almost 10 times the size, with 734 technologies versus the game's original 86. The game barely runs in late game, but it's still a blast this day and continues to be one of the most exciting mods in the history of the franchise. Number 8, the XCOM franchise. XCOM is a series which began in 1994 with UFO Enemy Unknown. This game involved the player fighting back an army of invading aliens, and despite being hard and a little janky, it became a fairly beloved DOS game. While the original series sputtered out in 2001, after a series of disappointing sequels, the Firaxis-led remake promised to change the score. Despite the original games being avoided for modding, likely due to how old they were, these remakes were something else, and has somehow been able to sprout one of the more active modding communities for modern game franchises. With the modern remake of Enemy Unknown came the frankly surprising modding community as hosted on Nexus Mods. Many mods allowed users to create and customize their own experience. Users could even edit their own files and create tweaks via DLLs within the title. Everything in both XCOM 1 and XCOM 2 just screams out with modding potential. Mods even appear to have shaped what later became XCOM 2, with many features originally primarily included in mods making their way into the base game. There was expanded emphasis on player choice, customization, and more, and mods just capitalized on this. XCOM 2 is one of the better examples of Steam Workshop integrations actually being used, though some of the mods were still found primarily on the Nexus. One of the most famous mods for XCOM 1, Enemy Unknown, was the Long War mod, which was intended to create a more in-depth game with an expanded campaign, new classes, and pretty much a total conversion of the product. The mod quickly became ubiquitous with XCOM, to the point where the creators would provide special privileges for XCOM 2. The Long War mod pack was also so ambitiously revered that it felt less like a mod and more like an unofficial expansion pack. I found myself playing the base XCOM 1 or 2, then the same game over again with Long War, and then a third playthrough with the eventual expansion packs. Recently someone pointed the Long War to work with expansion pack 2 for the XCOM 2 one, and I know it's only a matter of time before I dive back in, head first, into the mod once more for yet another 100-hour playthrough. The mod team of Long War was so successful that it even started their own company and have successfully kickstarted their first game, Terra Invicta, which promises to take everything they want to do with Long War and make something new. Currently it's still in development, but we're getting closer to release every day. Number 7. Freelancer. Freelancer, also known as one of the worst games to try and Google on the modern internet, is a 2003 space game created by Chris Roberts of Wing Commander and Star Citizen fame. It's perhaps the single most accessible game in the genre, due in part to the 3D space being very much like a traditional area rather than full 3D space. While you can fly to any extreme up or down the axis, most planets, ships, stations, and nebula exist on the same 2D plane. Combine this with having a core, with the cohorts having a so-called trade lane system as opposed to a system requiring constant map usage. Okay, that's a lie. You're always looking at the damn map. I looked at the map just to read all the lore for every damn planet and station I visit. Anyway, different type of map reading. Point is, this game is incredibly easy to jump into and play. Now, in a shock which has likely been dampened by the fact this is a modding video, Freelancer has a very active and passionate modding community. Even today, when the two most well-known mods have slowed in terms of major game updates, the community itself is still active. It's primarily been split between two groups, the SWAT Crossfire community and the Discovery community. Both of these mods are mutually exclusive and have different goals. While both feature additional factions, planets, ships, weapons, systems, and pretty much everything, they have two very distinct goals, with Discovery being primarily multiplayer focused and Crossfire focusing on single player. Hell, Crossfire even lets you return to the Sol system, something which I always appreciate in any space game set in a universe without Earth as the starting point. I remember once playing Discovery Online. Now, I don't do this much, but the plan was to be a freelancer pirate and explore. I had to gain some rep with the pirates, and that way I could sneak my way through Alaska and into deep systems and check out what was new. I worked my way up to get the proper reputation ship with the pirates as a freelancer. I was green with them and went through the gate. Fighting with the Liberty security forces I did because what I was doing was illegal. Who could have possibly guessed that going to a military base would be illegal? To be immediately slaughtered by a pirate battleship on the other side. I was annoyed and complained like, hey, I worked really hard to get the correct reputation chip for this. I had to fight my way through the portal in the first place. We were green. Why the hell did you kill me? He eventually apologized and came into New York system to help escort me back into Alaska. A pirate battleship in the center of Liberty space. Yes, watching that entire RP server light up with panic was both hilarious and incredibly satisfying, as I used my time to slip into the gate and continue my plan. The point is, the modding communities of both Crossfire and Discovery are passionate, and they still use this as a platform for role-playing life as a space caption even today. Recently, there's even a new mod in the scene called Freelancer HD Edition, which does exactly what it says in the tin. Provides a HD experience to Freelancer, complete with full AA, resolution options, and many other modern conveniences. Unfortunately, it isn't cross-compatible with the other modding kingpins, but damn. It's nice to see yet another initiative trying to keep a game which likely should have died a decade ago live and kicking. Honestly, if anyone wants a full series on either Crossfire or Freelancer HD, just ask. I mean, I'll likely play it myself either way, but if you do want to join me, I'm the tiniest interest in seeing more, please do ask so I can share with you and everyone else. P.S. by the way, I'm actually really looking forward to Star Citizen. I have lifetime insurance on both a Freelancer and a Buccaneer. I'm really pumped for. You know, comes out. Number 6. Warcraft and Starcraft. While not specifically a franchise mention, both Warcraft 3 and each Starcraft game made by Blizzard Entertainment have their place in history within modding in an interesting way. These games are faction-based RTSs with resource gathering and base building. They were similar games to Annihilation in that they did have separate factions, or separate races in this case, and each of those factions were different. The races in Warcraft and Starcraft were a lot different, so there was different gameplay mechanics, heroes, and even sub-factions that could be found in certain maps. One of the key differences between Warcraft 3 and other RTS games, however, was the addition of RPG-style hero mechanics. And while there are other games nowadays which have a similar RPG RTS mechanics like Spellforce, for example, it also laid the path well for what was to come. These games proved a pivotal moment for many young would-be game designers. What may actually surprise you is that neither of these games actually had what would be known as a modding community, instead shipping with a map editor. Now, these map editors could have gotten away with being simple, basic map generators with the ability to place props at will, and it likely would have been plenty back when it was released. Instead, these editors contain the many tools used in the creation of campaigns, including triggers, linking, and even scripting. These editors will be anything but simple to those who decide to delve into them. So you can imagine what it was like in the late 90s, early ooze, people exploring and building maps with these tools. Quickly, the talented community was able to make fully featured multi-hour long RPG games, battle arenas, and even wave-based combat. Many of these maps invented a brand new gameplay concept, which may have led to creation of whole new game genres. Take tower defense. While one could argue that it was around in one form or another for many years, maps like Element TD, Gem TD, and the, quite frankly, staggering number of other tower defense games on Warcraft maps page managed to expose a wider variety of gamers to the concepts and gameplay which would soon become the incredibly popular tower defense genre. Mostly flash games for a very long time, but still it was very popular. In a more direct example, the classic map Aeon of Strife for StarCraft was recreated within Warcraft as Defense of the Ancients. This and many similar maps were designed around the idea of trying to destroy an opposing team's ancient, buying upgrades for your heroes based on the NPC creeps you killed. This concept alone was taken from the skirmish maps where they had random teams of monsters around which you could kill for item drops, but it seemed a natural fit for this. Unlike tower defense games, which were more, players versus creep, this new type of map was more player versus environment. So essentially, the players will be versing each other, using the environment to hopefully boost their heroes, and hopefully the popularity of this type of map led to League of Legends, and then eventually to Dota 2, supported by Valve. It'll never cease to amaze me how much ingenuity went into this community and its impressively diverse mapper community. While it has only continued with StarCraft 2 and to a lesser extent Warcraft 3 Reforged, I can't help but feel like the switch to primarily producing nothing but World of Warcraft may have deprived us of a larger, thriving RTS community, even today. Number 5, Stellaris. I made an entire series on this one, so you probably saw it coming. Hell, the only reason I didn't also mention Star Sector is because I was having a really hard time limiting this list to only 10 and had to chuck it out when I just remembered another amazing community I wanted to shout out. Anyway, Stellaris! Stellaris is yet another 4X game with a focus on building up not just a civilization, but a galactic power. Most of the fun in the early game of Stellaris comes from the roleplay capacity of the initial exploration phase. This phase involves rapid exploration and exploitation of your area of space before you start hitting walls in the form of various different hazards, such as the weak, friendly pacifists and fallen empires at best, or fanatical purifiers at worst. While Stellaris modding does everything from simple quality of life tweaks, where it really starts to shine is its ability to add to the vastness already present in the base game. One common thing to add is additional super rare exploration features that vary the way the map or universe is spawned. Take Planetary Diversity, a mod which introduces a number of new habitable worlds. It increases the habitable worlds by a factor of 9. Adding Gillies planet modifiers or legendary worlds, and suddenly those planets have a chance to be legendary powerhouses, full of new stories, relics, and more. Some mods introduce late game power sprawl, both for you and through introducing great new crises that can annihilate you. Gigastructures and ancient case of technologies both add a dramatic level of escalation to the technologies and threats found in the universe. Other mods simply add complexity to existing mechanics, like the dynamic political events mod, or ways you can customize your empire, like the ethics and civics mod on the impactful side, or expanded colors and emblems on the cosmetic side. The single most impressive element of the Stellaris community is how well most of the mods work together. It's very common for people to be able to absolutely weigh down their computers with hundreds of mods, tens of which may impact the game to a point of it not even feeling like the same game. Hell, you don't even need hundreds of mods for that. One of the most popular mods is a standalone mod called Star Trek New Horizons, which includes custom races, stories, events, technologies, and even a world map dedicated to helping you have the Star Trek of your dreams. In the fact that developers consistently work with modders to give them the features they want, fix up late game lag with even late game shenanigans beyond the original scope of the game being fixed, and you have a hell of a good time. Number 4, the HalfLife franchise. Finally in the home stretch, and while it's been an incredibly long time since I've touched HalfLife franchise, granted, due in no small part to the creators still learning how to count, I would be remiss if I didn't at least touch on the behemoth which is the Half-Life modding community. Amazingly, this community too is active to this very day, and mods which started as humble reskins have turned into entire life stealers in of themselves. Counter-Strike, Team Fortress, Day of Defeat, The Ship, Stanley Parable, Gary's mod, okay granted that one started as a mod for the Source engine, not Half-Life, but I still count it. So many mods within this community have actually made something of themselves. The game itself is also universally loved. The game was entirely recreated within Black Mesa, a game remake of the original Gold SRC Half-Life into the Source engine, which powered the modern Half-Life games and their offshoots. The number of game companies and careers which have spun off from how accessible and powerful these two engines end up being leaves Half-Life as one of the most influential game franchises ever released. Number 3, the Elder Scrolls franchise. Speaking of influential, how about we talk about one of the first proper open world RPG series? The entire series of games known for setting the bar on size, freedoms, and gameplay mechanics expected in modern open-world titles. Each one an impressive feat of game design in different ways. Morrowind having the best world, Oblivion having the best quests, and Skyrim with the best and most accessible gameplay. Both in terms of literal playability and the number of devices you can play it on. Really, they need to release more than just Skyrim over and over. The next game really can't come out soon enough. Anyway, well, it certainly has its own defined style and gameplay, which has applied across pretty much anything Bethesda makes in the modern era. The Elder Scrolls franchise has long been known for its amazing modding community. The community began after the release of the third title, Morrowind, and its impressive construction set allowed for complete modding of all elements of the game, including 3D assets, scripting, movies, music, and more. Unlike scenario-based map making as found in Warcraft, Elder Scrolls boasts an impressive a la carte offering similar to that of Annihilation. There were no limits practically to the number of plugins you could install, and thanks to the increasing community support, most mods would easily work together. Eventually, the script extender was also released, which led to expanding what could be done in modding Morrowind, and eventually in future games as well. Often the only limitations found in these games were for its aging engine, and modders decided to fix that too with the release and continued improvement of the OpenMW project. There is a little infighting about OpenMW, or if the original and source engine graphics mods is better, but my stance is that OpenMW allowed me to play a stable run with more mods than I ever would have thought possible, and the quality of life additions are exceptional. So you probably know which side my bread is buttered on, but I digress. While this community does dip slightly in terms of complexity with each subsequent game, and this is due to the game itself and technical or skill-based limitations in developers, or thanks to the lack of 3D modelers or voice actors. The community time and time again, though, continues to boast an impressive selection of mods. The primary home of Elder Scrolls mods in this day and age is the Nexus mods, but it also had Planet Elder Scrolls, whose closure would have led to the loss of an excessive number of mods, if not for the work of Grace House Fligerty. Yes, I did include that just to say the name. Anyway, there's so many impressive mods worth mentioning, spanning from rebuilding Kvatch in Oblivion, to projects for making entire huge sections of Tamriel within Morrowind, like Tamriel Rebuilt, a mod which essentially adds a playable landmass with quests and factions larger than that of the mainland game where Morrowind is set. Skyrim even saw total conversion games like Enderfall come out, harking back to me to the golden era of HalfLife or Warcraft, where entire concepts were birthed from modding. Number 2. Dink Smallwood. What do you get when you take a random arsehole and pig farmer, kill his mum, and let him loose on the world? Likely a whole lot of things, and not all of them pleasant, but it is a product of its time. Dink Smallwood is a simplistic Zelda-esque RPG full of immature humour, questionable life choices, and more ducks than you can conceivably bash the heads off while watching them run around and slowly fill the screen up with a disturbingly large amount of cartoon blood. The goal of this game is simple: travel from map to map, beating up creatures and slowly unlocking a series of spells, weapons, and so on, as you increase your attack, magic, and defense stats. The game itself received mixed reviews and has become somewhat of a cult classic due to an incredibly active modding community based out of the Dink network. Amazingly, despite the time that's passed, the community still lives, albeit with a much more limited release schedule. Basically, Dink Smallwood came bundled with a powerful map editor, designed to make small, self-contained total conversion mods for the base game. The community started to release these en masse, even categorizing them based on how long people would expect to get out of them. The smallest of these D-mods were called ROMs, and would only take less than an hour to beat to completion. With many of these representing a modder's first attempt at making a D-mod, many ROMs were nothing more than small in-jokes or tests, so few were highly regarded. Quests started to change this, as they would often last anywhere from a few hours to just under the length of the game. This would often be a modder's attempt at creating story, often over multiple parts, similar to a serial novel or similar. Quests were the most numerous type of D-mod, but surprisingly not the largest available. The final and longest D-mod destination, not counting Weird, was titled Epic. These mods would last just as long, if not longer, than the original game. They would often come bundled with many hours of secrets, side quests, custom mechanics, and even bundled with walkthroughs. The most highly rated of these included Pilgrim's Quest, Stone of Balance, and Prophecy of the Ancients. And while almost all of these will feel dated by today's standard, especially in storytelling and, let's just say Dink isn't the nicest person, and this continues on to the D-mods quite readily. But that aside, the fact they're still available all this time later and the community is still active is kind of crazy. The best part of all, Dink Smallwood HD now is entirely free. It even has an inbuilt mod downloader now. It wasn't for a long time that it was free, but it was made free in open source long before it was the trendy path for old games. If you wish to pick up Dink Smallwood and try 20 years of modding history, all you need to do is download the launcher and take a stroll down the old Dink network lane. Number 1, Stardew Valley. Look, this had to be here, right? Like, it just had to be. How could I not have it here after all the crazy fun I'm having with my series? Well, if you somehow don't already know, Stardew Valley is a farming game, also known as a life sim these days, based off the early 2D Harvest Moon, now Story of Seasons, style gameplay. The loop here is simple. You start off with nothing. No friends, no money, no sense of how privileged you are despite somehow being gifted a farm the size of half the town and basically lauded as a hero. Stardew is a chill experience where you build yourself up from quote-unquote nothing, unlocking new areas, mysteries, and even romantic opportunities as you make a place for yourself in the valley. On release, the game was good. Not perfect, but being the only game in town led Stardew to being the first and most successful farming sim on PC. Having been designed by one amazing guy, Concerned Ape, Eric Forene, who made all the art, music, programming, you'd be forgiven for expecting this dude to try and defend his baby from the prying hand of modders, but no. Throughout its entire lifespan, Concerned Ape has been consistently delivering on whatever the modding community needed, with its most recent, at the time of recording, patch enabling more modding than ever due to creating a 64-bit version. The next patch promises to bring even more depth to this. A crazy claim for someone who is now well deep in programming for his next game. But just what are the mods? Are they deserving of such high praise? Well, first of all, Smaffy, the modding API, is one of the best things I've ever seen a community create. It has installing mods as simple as dragging them into a folder. And while it doesn't have the same launcher style download system as some of the games, it does have an update tool for checking for mods, detailed logging of any issues you have, and a passionate and helpful community to boot. Smaffy unlocks whole new worlds of mods, ranging from simple quality of life features such as community center helpers, speed mods, and cheat chests, which I definitely use chests everywhere, I love it, all the way to expansion pack worthy mods like Ridgeside Village, East Scarp, Stardew Expanded, and the still in development Downtown Zuzu. The most impressive part of this starts with an actually unpleasant story. Stardew Valley Expanded was marred by controversy when it first came out due to suspicions of plagiarism. While the problematic content was removed and apologized for, it did leave a sour taste in the mouth of many people and modders. Unfortunately for them, the mod was actually phenomenal and pretty much modified the entire space included within the vanilla game. While this does block a lot of modders from doing the same, lest they not risk not being downloaded by the people using this popular mod, it has led to the modding community being focused highly on compatibility. Originally, this started being caused by a bunch of whiny individuals consistently bugging if compatibility was available for Stardew Valley Expanded. This did, however, evolve into many creators actually thinking heavily about if their mods work together, not just with Expanded, but with other major mods in the space. Normally, you'd expect for communities to rightly rest on their laurels and say, hey, if you're using X mod, you can't use Y mod. But if my Stardew Valley or the mod series is anything to go by, this is in no way a problem for Stardew. Once upon a time, installing too many mods may have risked leading to crashes due to RAM usage, but thanks to the 64-bit patch, the only worry is elongated load times. Users may play Stardew in whichever way they wish, with as many or as few mods as they wish, and still have fun. The mammoth efforts of the community to create such a diverse range of options should be greatly applauded, and if you're looking for a game to mod, which I assume you must be if you spent this time watching this whole bloody video, you could do a whole lot worse than Stardew Valley. Well, there you have it. My next Nest of Love is less of a game spotlight and more of a passionate rant about modding communities I loved. Who knew? Honestly, look, I'm no expert on these things. The only mods I've ever made were a simple card game for the tabletop simulator and a map for War of the Overworld. Nothing like this. But the passion and continued projects which come out of the modding communities deserve some spotlighting and respect. Given my broad love for games and mods, it makes sense that I'd want to highlight some of these. Honorary mentions go out to the many games which I thought of during the script writing process that I just didn't have time to go through, such as Terraria, FTL, Minecraft, Surviving Mars, Open Transport Tycoon Deluxe, GTA, Unreal Tournament, Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. Honestly, I'm gonna need a second video at some point, aren't I? Ugh. The point is, if you like the sound of even one of these titles, why not pick up the games? Give them a go, and if you love them, show your mod community creators how much you care. Thank you for joining me on this Nest of Love. Look, and I'm sorry about all the top 10 crap. I just really wanted to talk about the number of games, and I thought that this would be the best way to do it. Join me next time for more games, more mods, and more, well, me making a fool of myself. This has been the Augmented Owl, and it's been a hoot.